Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Ramadan. This is the Institute of Islamic Information and Education, the reading room where we host classes and sessions and things like this. We are in the midst of remodeling. As you can see, we've commissioned a interior decorator to put together a little bit of a peek on how it's going to look when it's all finished. So it's been like this, kind of on pause for a while, and we're going to hit the restart button and get it done. And so tonight we are very, very honored to have our scholar in residence, Ubaydullah Evans, Al-Azhar graduate of Islamic law, to help us understand a little bit about the etiquette of activism. And so he's going to speak, and we're all going to just try to pass the time while our tummy grumbles. And so, and then Iftar will be at 8:30, inshallah. So, Mr. Ubaydullah, take it away.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم. How is everybody? Besides hungry. I'm sure that everybody is hungry. This is an honor for me to have been able to sustain a commitment to this space over what now must be maybe 2 years or so. We've been, doing some programming out of this space, and at times the attendance has gone up, at times the attendance has gone down, but you do have a small group of folks that have remained committed to the place, and those of us that do attend the classes we put on regularly here and the sessions we hold regularly here, we do find not only a lot of benefit in those classes, but a lot of benefit in the companionship that we experience with each other. So we welcome you into the space. We're very happy to have you. I wanted to say just a few brief words about Ramadan and how that relates to activism. This started for me as kind of a something I gleaned or something I observed when watching one particular activist who's very well known for making YouTube videos. And this is like the highest expression of activism now is to make a YouTube video. And I was watching his video, and he was unapologetically calling out this person and calling out that person, and he was ridiculing people. He swore about a few different people. And usually I watch his videos and I find the content a mix of engaging, stimulating. Some of it I find quite humorous. Like, he was talking about this implantable biomicrochip that, they're trying to put into the skins of babies when they're born. Some of it is a little far-flung. Some of it is interesting. But on this occasion, and it was perhaps only because I was fasting, I just looked at him and I said, he has some of the worst adab that I have ever seen in my life. Meaning, despite the fact that he's engaged in this act of public truth-telling to systems, to people in positions of power, he himself does not appear to be committed to an ethic of self-purification and taking self-inventory. And I said to myself, in our midst, among the activists of our community, you do have similar disconnects, similar divides. And Ramadan is perhaps the best time of the year to try and make ourselves whole, to have integrity, to be holistic. So when you look at Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says concerning Ramadan, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed for you, like it was prescribed for those before you, so that you might learn God consciousness or taqwa. so that you might learn what it is to be aware of the presence of God. And when I thought about that, I thought about something that one of my teachers, when he was asked, Dr. Sherman Jackson was asked, what is Ramadan all about? And instead of giving some highly articulated answer about what Ramadan is about this and that, instead of, giving something that is quote unquote deep, because every time we talk about Islam publicly, there is pressure to be deep. You have to say sometimes people think something deep is being said when nothing deep is being said. I have to go to the bathroom, it's deep. Deep. If you're talking about Islam publicly. But instead, he said Ramadan is really about being hungry. That's what Ramadan is about. It's about being hungry. And that feeling that you have in the pit of your stomach about now, that listlessness you feel in your limbs around midday, that very stale taste you have in your mouth, when you're very easily agitated, all of that is a part of hunger. And it's something that we scarcely feel as Americans. It's something we can hardly even identify with. We feel it and it's like a foreign thing. What is this? Because at every other time of the year, we're just always satiating ourselves. We're just completely overindulged. Always. But in Ramadan, God forces you to experience hunger. And then He says to you, you cannot satiate your hunger. You cannot quench your thirst. You cannot even spend what time you might want to spend with your spouse until I say it's okay for you to do so. And you can do so at sunset. And all the while, you have to experience personal adversity. You have to experience personal challenges. You have to experience personal weakness, and you just have to soldier through. And one of the things that really captured me about this idea is that Ramadan is so personal. It's so focused on you. And many of our activists, Muslim and non, the focus is always on something else. See, let's save the beluga whales. Let's save the environment. We have to advocate on behalf of the under-resourced. We have to give voice to the voiceless. All of this is good. All of this is, in fact, a part of the work of treading the path of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the first order of business for anybody committed to practicing Islam is dealing with the enemy, not out there, but the enemy in here. The enemy in between your two sides. What about that enemy? And it's very easy to take on every other external enemy. It's very easy to externalize the enemy. See, we have to deal with this 99%. We have to redistribute these resources. None of that's wrong. But it's not the 99%, I guarantee you. It's not the 90%, it's the 100%. All of us fall far from the glory of God. And until we all take on an ethic of personal reformation, all of our efforts to be effective in the world, you won't really see the benefit in them. I can almost guarantee you of that. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in mind when He says, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسِ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ? Do you remind people about righteousness, but then you forget yourself? Is this? And I feel like Ramadan, because of this hunger that is very personal, you're not hungry for anybody else. You're not thirsty for the environment. Right? You're not restless for the animals that aren't being treated ethically. All of these are very important things. But the hunger, the thirst, the listlessness, that lack of energy, all of this you experience for yourself. And there's something about human existence that keeps us connected to self. I was observing my son. There he is right there looking at his feet. And one of the things that really, now my son is in a state that most Muslims would refer to as fitrah, the state of kind of primordial nature, just doing things naturally. You know, although I don't know, lately I've been growing concerned that he's becoming manipulative. You know, like he's getting out of the fitrah and he's learning how to manipulate the situation and play to odds that advantage him. But for the most part, his state is completely fitri. He's just in a very natural state. And one of the things I noticed about him is that he is completely selfish. It's just how he is. He's not concerned about how much I'm sleeping or how much his mother is sleeping. He's not concerned about how much work she has, and she has lots of work. He's not concerned about how we don't like to hear him cry. He does not care about any of that. In fact, he is under the impression that the entire world exists for him. You can just tell. Even now, he's thinking they're talking about me. I'm telling you, that's what he's thinking. He's thinking that he's talking about me. He thinks that the world revolves around him. And even though part of your coming of age, part of your maturation, part of your growth involves understanding the world is not revolving around you. Right? The world is not revolving around you. You're literally an ant in Africa. That's what you are as a human being. The world is not revolving around you. But you cannot forget yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, قُوا أَنفُسُكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا الَّتِي وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. Save yourselves and your families from a fire that is fueled by human beings and stones. But Allah starts with save yourself. Save yourself. Think very critically about how you are before trying to save anyone else. Because if you are resurrected on the day of judgment, and the only good that you've done is that you've restrained yourself from oppressing people, you've restrained yourself from evil, you will have succeeded. That's foes. That is success. If you can add to that, and I advocated on behalf of the under-resourced, and I advocated on behalf of animals that weren't being treated ethically, and I advocated on behalf of the environment, then even better. Then you will be ascending the ranks of nearness to Allah. But if the only thing you get is Allah, see, I'm telling you, he's right now he's cutting me off, but he doesn't care. He's a natural human being in a natural state. He doesn't care, right? If the only thing you can say is, look, I reformed myself and I made sure that I didn't oppress anybody, you will have succeeded. And don't forget that. The second thing that we learn from fasting in relation to activism is that you can't have everything you want all the time. That is what we learned from this month. That right now all of you want to eat. I know I want to eat. But you can't. You can't have everything you want to have all the time. And the implications of not having everything you want all the time are very deep. Because this is what it means to be a citizen. This is what it means to be a neighbor. The willingness to relinquish what you want for what might be the greater good. Even when what you think you want is good. Or even when what you want, you feel very strongly about it. And you think everybody should want this. And if you don't want it, there's something wrong with you. The lesson in fasting is fall back. Fall back. Just because you want to see that kind of change in the world instantly, Allah might not allow you to see that kind of change in the world instantly. And what are you going to do? Are you going to go on Facebook and blast everybody that won't lend support to your cause? Are you going to morally shame everybody? Or is it where you think they should be in terms of their consciousness around a particular issue? It's like, no. Irham man fil ard, yarhamkum man fis sama. What Arabic linguistic form is that? He's studying Arabic right now.
Which one?
Irham man fil ard, yarhamkum man fis sama.
Are you talking about Sal Amr? Or
Huh? If you show mercy on earth, the one above the heavens will show mercy on you. That's talab and jawab talab.
oh, Talab.
So if you command something, when you answer the command, that's a whole other discussion. I'm just testing to see what he's learning in Egypt. But irham man fil ard, have mercy on people, and Allah will have mercy on you. So even though we feel like it is absolutely vital that we get people to sign up for this or that, but it is absolutely vital that people are aware that we need to do this or that. If people aren't where you are, it just might be where you have to exercise some patience. You have to exercise some understanding. You have to exercise some tolerance. So these are lessons that we learn, through our Ramadan. And if you aren't working on yourself, don't expect to be effective working on anybody else. They say, "Al-kalima kharajat min al-qalb, dakhalat fil qalb." A word that comes out of the heart, it enters the heart. And this is why we find that many of our efforts, they're fruitless. Because for us, this is just lip service. This is just something that we think serves as a proxy for real, authentic, legitimate commitment to Allah. And there's nothing. If you're committed to Allah, you're committed to Allah. And there's no amount of other commitments that can take the place of that commitment. And this is, I'm not saying this to minimize the importance of activism. Activism is important. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was an activist. But if you think, because I'm an activist, I don't have to be worried about refining myself. Because I'm an activist, I can be rude to people. Because I'm an activist, I can call people names. It's the urgency of the cause. This is deception. And you find people falling into this all the time. It's the urgency around the cause that just this is the reason why I'm behaving in this way. That is not a reasonable excuse. That is not okay. So these are just some thoughts about activism and engaging, and some of the things that we learn. I think through our fasting in relation to activism. Are there any questions? Comments? Insights?
Yeah, I had an insight from what you're saying. I went to the dentist today just to do a regular checkup, and my crown ended up getting swallowed by the vacuum that they have, and I was really upset. I'm fasting here, and the doctor can't even clean my teeth properly and all that stuff. And then I became patient, and at the end, he ended up doing all this procedure I wanted on my teeth that I needed to do 3 or 4 times. Come back 3 or 4 times. He ended up doing it for next to nothing because I had the patience.
Ramadan always reveals to me how much food is connected to my mood, or how much being able to satisfy my desires is connected to my mood. So I was waiting on a package. And I never really thought of myself as an emotional eater, because I thought, I'm in pretty good shape, and, we try to eat fairly nutritiously. And whenever I thought about an emotional eater, I just thought about somebody coming off a breakup, sitting with a tub of Haagen-Dazs, and they're eating it, and I thought, well, I don't do that, But I was waiting for this package, and there was 4 identical. This was a package that had 4 identical parts. So they delivered 2 on Saturday. Then they delivered 1 Monday. And then for the whole week, every day, they didn't deliver the package. And I was like a kid like a kid at, I don't know if it was a kid at Christmas in a Muslim space, but every day I would sit by the window waiting on my package. Like, and I'm sure the post lady thought I was stalking her. You know? I was just waiting for her to show up with bodyguards. You know, I would be looking out the window, and I said, did you bring my package? And she would explain to me, you know, sir, the procedure is I ring the bell if I have the package. If you aren't here, I put one of these little pink cards in your mailbox. Then you go to the post office and you pick up your parcel. I don't need you to ask me every day, do you have my package? Do you have my package? And every day she said no. The first thing I would want to do is to go to the kitchen and get something to eat. I'm like, do you have my package? No. Oh. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I'm fasting. And it made me think, how much of our emotional lives do we cope with through self-indulgence? You know, whether it's shopping, eating, spending time on Facebook, gossiping, all of this produces this kind of cathartic, you know, I feel better now. You know, some people call shopping a painkiller. You know, I remember, I forget where I heard that term, but a woman was showing a pair of shoes she bought. She said, you know, these were painkillers. Maybe I was out shopping. She said, these are painkillers. And, you know, I think Ramadan, it forces a certain kind of emotional maturity because this is not a way that you can deal with your problems. You just, if I was disappointed, if I was dejected, if I was frustrated, I can't drown it in the Haagen-Dazs caramel cone. I just have to deal with it and say, قَدَرَ اللَّهُ مَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. And if Allah decrees that I get my package, I will. And if I never get it, it was still His qadr. And you know, that was kind of an insight during this moment. Other things that you guys have been seeing, experiencing during Ramadan.
Did you speak about forgiveness?
Um,
We're, a lot with all of our activism around, like, let's say, what's going on with Charleston tonight with murder. In a sense, some families have already forgiven this group, but I think it's very hard for a lot of people to understand how to extend that kind of forgiveness is to tragic.
well, you know, it's interesting. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may Allah bless him and grant him peace. And don't let me get away with leaving these terms untranslated. You know, but he, in his personal conduct, will always exemplify that which is best. Always. However, Islam usually does not make that the expectation because human beings have limitations and we have weaknesses. So if somebody is representing a family member that is killed wrongfully, they have two choices. They can request acquittal. They can request redress. No, something has to be done about this. Or they can forgive. We don't have this idea that you must forgive. Because sometimes that's a type of oppression. To say to someone who maybe isn't emotionally ready or capable to forgive, look, just forgive the brother. Just forgive the sister. No, I want my right restored. No, I want justice. But if you want to forgive, that option is there. And that's what the Prophet exemplifies. And this is what Allah says is closer to ihsan. It's closer to excellence to forgive somebody. But you don't have to forgive. Now, just a point of clarification, things that pose a threat to societies must be dealt with by societies. Like if somebody murders somebody, you can't just say, you know, I forgive him. And we put the murderer back on the street. But when you forgive them, you're saying, I don't desire that God punish this person in the next life for what they did. That's what forgiveness means in terms of your personal ethic. That I don't want this person to go to hell for what they did. Now, in terms of there being consequences in this world, of course, that's not just because one insists on there being some consequences now, that doesn't mean that you haven't forgave the person. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ, peace be upon him, said, أفضل جهاد كلمة حق عند سلطان جائر. The best form of struggling in the way of God that a person can perform is speaking the truth in the face of a corrupt leader. That's the best form of jihad, the best form of struggle for the sake of God a person can perform. So, telling the truth unapologetically, you can do that and still be a forgiving person. See, some of us, and this is what we have to learn from the Sunnah of Muhammad, that what motivates you to seek justice should not be anger. See, some of us, that's the only fuel we have for activism, is anger. I'm mad. No, what motivates you to seek justice publicly is mercy and love for those being oppressed. And I'm actually forgiving and understanding of the one oppressing himself, because even the oppressor is still worthy of our forgiveness. Because the oppressor is first and foremost an oppressor of himself. Allah says, the Prophet says, "Unsur akha zaliman aw mazluman." Help your brother, whether he is an oppressor or he's being oppressed. And the Arabs of the time, they were straight up gangster. So they said, we know how to help our brother if he's being oppressed, up these swords and handle business. But how do we help our brother if he's an oppressor? Stop him from his oppression. When you stop somebody from their oppression, you're helping them. So if you're talking about the redistribution of wealth, or you're talking about the ethical treatment of animals, or you're talking about policy reform in inner cities, you're helping the oppressor to be relieved of their oppression of themselves. And this is an important shift that we have to make. See, if you look at the 23 period, the 23 year, I'm really hungry. If you look at the 23-year period of the prophetic mission, one of the things that the Prophet, peace be upon him, succeeded at doing was pulling the powerful and the powerless in society into a shared and collective identity. And it's almost always impossible to do that. Pulling the powerful, let me say that again, some of you are looking like, Ubayd, it's too late in the day to be using these big words. Pulling the powerful and pulling the powerless into a shared space of identifying with each other. And we haven't been able to do that in America. We haven't been able to do that. And this is why, and I'm saying this, look at me. I'm a black man. Nobody can confuse me for anything else. But when black people stand up and say to the dominant society, and by dominant I mean numerically dominant, economically dominant, and politically dominant, we want this, we want that, our rights are this, our rights are that. Are we surprised, follow me, when they callously say, I don't see any of my self-interest in that? So what? That's what you want. What's the incentive for me to do any of that? Why would I do any of that? So on the one hand, we hammer. Then we try to appeal to the moral conscience. Because it would make you a good person? Well, obviously, I don't care about that. No, I mean, obviously, I don't care. I don't care about that. But when you can say to the powerful, listen, this is advantageous for you because of X, Y, Z, the same way it's advantageous for the downtrodden, the oppressed, the struggling, the poor, X, Y, and Z. then you're implementing the prophetic model of change in society. Because the Prophet, peace be upon him, he was able to pull Bilal and Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan was an Arab aristocrat. Money, power, well connected. He was able to pull both of them into a shared space of identifying with each other so that they knew your interests are connected to my interests and my interests are connected to your interests. And this is one of the reasons why we give the zakat. This is one of the reasons why Muslims are forced to give zakat. Muslims are only of two kinds. You have those that qualify to receive zakat and those that should be giving zakat. This mandatory annual wealth cleansing charity. Either you're giving it or you're receiving it. There is no in between. And it's always better when you can take it and place it in the hand of somebody less fortunate. Because what it suggests to them is that we are together. Your prosperity is my prosperity. As you experience fortune, I too will experience fortune. And if you can't do that, and your strategy is just to agitate and to, what's another word? Agitate, and frustrate, initiate, instigate, until the people you're instigating say, okay, let's do something different. Historically, that hardly ever happens. That hardly ever happens. So you have to, you have to pull people into a place of sharing their collective interests. He's asking about like reforming yourself, and he's saying finding a community where you can reform yourself. And I think that this time of year, we are experiencing the best part of what it means to reform ourselves. Because your connection to food, to drink, to conjugal relations if you're married, your connection to those things are stronger than your connection to anything else. I guarantee you. And this is why the great Imam Ghazali said that eating something delicious, alright, mouth-watering, getting to the point where you're satiated, right? Like, I've had enough, but I could go for some more just because it's so delicious. Pulling your hand back from the plate, he said, it is harder for me to do that than to avoid any sin. It's harder for me to pull. When you're eating something that's good, and you think, you know what, I've had enough. But this is some good pie. When you're just eating to be eating. Pulling my hand back from the plate at that point is more difficult than avoiding any sin. Why? Because your appetite for food, your appetite for drink, your appetite for intercourse, strong. Some people will even suggest that this comes from your instincts, the animal instincts of human beings, which are strong. If you can curb, if you can regulate your use of those things, oh man, you can regulate almost anything. I guarantee you. What we're afraid of, and this is why some of us, first night, if Eid al-Fitr, if Eid falls on a weekend, man, we gotta go to the club. Got to. Because you don't want to convince yourself that you can do, 30 days I've been abstaining from food, drink, man, I feel too religious. I don't even want to think of myself as being that pious. Let me call my partner right now, man, we going. Because you've exhibited a kind of strength that you probably are uncomfortable with, that you can, there's a hadith Qudsi, where Allah says, كل عمل وكل عمل ابن آدم له إلا الصيام فهو لي وأنا أجزي به. Every action of the human being is for the human being. Except for fasting. It is mine. And I give a special reward for it. Why is this? Because everything you do has a public component. If you take Shahada, you do so publicly. If you're identified as a Muslim, people identify you as a Muslim publicly. You know, you take Shahada, everybody hugs you. You end up smelling like road spray. They're giving you hugs and invitations that they don't intend on fulfilling. You know the game. If you pray, everybody sees you pray. If you make Hajj, you come back, you got a bad haircut. We know you made Hajj. If you give the zakat, you give it to somebody, they know you gave it. But fasting, if you do it, only Allah knows you're doing it. I always say that the most anti-Ramadan slogan on the market is the Snickers slogan. Hungry? Why wait? If a person picks up a Snickers bar, hungry? Why wait? You know, they make a good point. Scarf it down in private and still come to Iftar holding their stomach. Oh man. When is Iftar? Who's going to know that they aren't fasting? Who's going to know? Who will know? Only Allah will know. And in spite of that, most Muslims across a wide spectrum of practice, from very practicing to mildly practicing to not practicing at all, most Muslims will not touch food even in the privacy of their own homes with no one around during the day in Ramadan. Why is that? Because there's some taqwa there. There's some God consciousness there. What they're probably dealing with is that the image of being religious, I don't see myself like that. And part of that's because of the bad conduct of religious people. I don't see myself as one of those religious kinds. But if you really didn't have any consciousness of Allah, if you really didn't revere, love Allah, what would prevent you from eating? You're at home. Nobody knows. What's preventing you from eating? What's preventing you from eating? And the question that we don't want to ask ourselves, why isn't that same thing making me pray outside of Ramadan? Why isn't that same thing making me refrain from the sins I commit outside of Ramadan? I won't do it now. I'm hungry as I don't know what. Nobody's around. Nobody will know. But for some reason, it's like, I just can't do it. I can't do it. I've talked to Muslims. Don't pray. Don't, none of that. They say, man, during Ramadan, I'll go to the refrigerator. I said, man, I'm not really that religious. What's the big deal, man? I don't do anything else in Islam. Why should I do this? And then they'll just close the refrigerator. I can't do it. I can't do it. That question is the question we have to ask ourselves. Is there any difference? Is Allah Allah? Is disobedience disobedience? It is. So what's the difference in Ramadan? And so sometimes Ramadan is kind of like detecting the pulse of your iman. But you know what? It's still alive. Sometimes we think it's completely dead. And you come to Ramadan and you're like, you know what? I'm in the basement, but I'm still in the building. I'm still in the building. And what I hope that we do through Ramadan is just, get on the elevator, inshallah, take it all the way to the penthouse. Huh? Penthouse just means the place up top, not the I don't know no other penthouse. I don't know. Is there another penthouse? Yeah.
I'm married.
Istahi. Yes, Ali.
You were talking about forgiveness. And, I think I saw Ubaydullah Muhammad Ali from Britain. He was talking about forgiveness in regards to the Charleston shooting. And I was just wondering if you could expand on what exactly does forgiveness mean in terms of like what you have to internally feel, what the Because a lot of people, they just say, oh, you know, I forgive you, but then they actually have a grudge. Or maybe you say you forgive someone because that's what you're supposed to do, because that's the best thing to do, but you don't really feel it.
Forgiveness is a process. It doesn't. Sometimes we give lip service to forgiveness. We say, I forgive you. But the minute something comes up, they can give you a whole binder of everything you've done wrong for the last 10 years.
3 years and 2 months.
It's like, I forgive you. When you do something wrong, May 31st, 2009. Don't you forgive that? But most of us forgive because we know it's an ideal. We know that this is the best thing to do, and because we want people to forgive us. You see? In terms of really letting it go, it takes time. And you'll know that you've really let it go when you can actually pray for the person. Because there's lots of people that I said I forgave, and when I was raising my hands to pray for them, I couldn't do it. I couldn't pray for them. I can't do it. I'm still angry. The way they treated me, the way they talked to me publicly, I couldn't do it. And then slowly but surely, I found myself able to pray for the person, to make dua for them, and to really not desire their punishment in akhirah. Because ultimately, that's what forgiveness means to us. The Prophet said, "Al-Dhul zulumat yawm al-qiyamah." Every act of wrong that you do to somebody, it will be darkness on the day of judgment. So that people will raise, like the day of judgment. This is why Allah is Ahkam al-Hakimin. Allah is the most just judge. Because the day of judgment, it will be kind of like a process of litigation. People will be raising cases against each other. This person did this to me. And Allah will be making sure the balance is even based on the good deeds. Okay, well, you take those. You take those. You take those. Until everything is square. And so if you wrong somebody, oh, it's coming back. They said 2 things you can rest assured of. Ain't nobody getting away with nothing. And ain't nobody getting out of here alive. You ain't got to worry about that. And that's why I remember, don't manipulate this. Don't use this. But there was a brother, we were doing business. He sold me a defective product. He told me all sales were final. He couldn't give me my money back. I argued. I said, you know what? We'll just deal with it in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I said, wait a minute. Hold on. Hold on, babe. Yeah, take your money. Take your money. Take your money. I don't need that. And I was like, man, I didn't mean to play that like a trump card. I was actually telling her, I give up. I said, you want to get my money back? We'll just deal with it in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See, you don't want that on you. That's the last thing. You got your own sins, own weaknesses, own shortcomings. The last thing you want on you is somebody saying he did this to me. He said that to me. He talked behind my back. He pointed his finger at me in public and laughed. I always tell the story of my friend that was working, and this is a story about how you can put ihsan in anything you do. Even something you think is insignificant, you can be excellent at it. He's working in a fast food restaurant. I was visiting him. And they had like the boxes of French fries. And he was like stuffing the fries all the way to the top to where fries were coming out of the box. And I said to him, Ahi, you're like going to tear the box with the fries. And he said, Ahi, if they order a large, they get a large. The last thing I need people talking to me about on the day of judgment is some hot, greasy potatoes. You're going to get whatever you order medium, I'm giving you a medium. The last thing I need people talking to me about is some hot potatoes. Because they're aware of that. Now, when it comes to forgiveness, Allah says, if you forgive people, Allah will forgive you. So it's born out of the same awareness. Look, the last thing I want is people bringing cases against me. So the last thing I want to do, you come to your dad first.
It's not time yet, though.
I'm not going to eat. This is very novel to me. It's kind of like 10. Now it's like the ball dropping. I couldn't imagine Omar and Abu Bakr doing that. 5, 4, 3. If it seemed like Maghrib, but in fairness, they were much more connected to the natural world than we are. So they could tell, but for us, like yesterday, it seemed like it was really dark, but it actually was really early. Now, people that live in nature, they can tell the difference. It's actually not sunset. It just looks really dark. But for us, oh, it's cloudy. Other observations? Woo! It's time.
There is the other side about what you're talking about now, which is hadith talk about لو يعلم الظالم ما أعده الله للمظلوم ما كان ظالما.
No, it's kind of like you repeat that again.
لو يعلم الظالم ما أعده الله للمظلوم ما كان ظالما.
He said that if the person who oppresses knew how Allah supports the oppressed, he would have never oppressed. And thank you, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ittaqi du'a al-mazlum, لأن ليس بينه وبين الله الحجاب." Fear the prayer of the one that is oppressed, because there is no barrier between the oppressed person and God. And they don't have to be Muslim, by the way. So that homeless person you step over, get out of my way. The last thing you want him to say is, "Oh God, just these arrogant people. God, please deal with them." It's the last thing you want. It's the last thing you want. I think it is time.